Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, some people say the Dodgers aren't going to sign anybody this offseason, but if they do, we're going to tell you who we want them to sign. Vince and I are going to do a draft of free agents that we want coming to the Dodgers this offseason. So that's what's on tap. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Dodger fans. This is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now, and then you will never miss a day because you know we're not going to. If this is your first time watching or listening, I am Jeff Snider. That guy next to me is Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. And we're coming up on 1,000 episodes of this podcast since we switched, Vince. We hit 1,000 overall podcast episodes together a while ago because we did 138 or something on our old weekly podcast. But we're coming up on 1,000 in the next, I think in January, we'll hit 1,000 episodes of Locked On Dodgers since we started, I think March 25th or something, 2019. So that's a lot of talking to each other.
That is a lot of talking to each other. That's a lot of talking about the Dodgers. And we're here and maybe hopefully 1,000 more.
Yeah, I'm up for it. So today there was no news in Dodgerland, but the lack of news is kind of news right now. It's kind of the biggest news story in Dodgerland is the Dodgers aren't doing anything, and are they going to do anything, and all of that. And so we thought we would spend today's episode talking about what we would like them to do if they decide to do something. And so what we're going to do, we're just going to do a straight up draft, and we are going to draft 5 players each who we would like the Dodgers to sign, and we'll go from there. I think there will be plenty to say about all of them, and we'd love to hear your feedback. I know Dodger fans are passionate, and you're going to have passionate thoughts on at least some of these guys we mentioned. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're watching on YouTube, shoot the comments into the YouTube comments section. If you're listening on the podcast, reach out to us through social media or email or text or whatever. We'll give you all the contact info at the end like we always do. But with that, Vince, I don't know how to decide who gets to go first. I could flip an invisible coin, but I don't know if that would be fair. Why don't you just go first?
You're right. No, I was going to say your idea. You can go first.
Well, I'll go first if you want me to go first.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to start controversial then. I want Carlos Correa. And this is one we've talked about a few times. And at the beginning of the offseason, I was like, okay, I guess I could be okay if they sign Correa. I'd learn to be okay with it. I've gotten so much more okay with it that now I really, really want Carlos Correa. He is such a good player. And in my mind, he's so far above even the other 3 big name shortstops, including 2 who've already signed big deals. He's younger he's the youngest of the 4. Other than sprint speed, he's the best. I saw a breakdown of, I think Saris tweeted it out, like a breakdown of the tools of each of the 4 big name shortstops. And Correa was the best in all the tools except sprint speed. He's the slowest of them. But I don't care really about that. Trey Turner was fast. That was fun, but you don't need a guy to be fast. But he has the best arm. He has the best bat. He has the most power. He's just the best shortstop there is. And I know he was on the cheating Astros, and I don't like the guy, but I think about the Dodgers lineup with Carlos Correa in it, and I think, man, I like that lineup. I really like that idea. So I want Carlos Correa, Vince.
Yeah, we both would have started there, so it didn't really matter who went first. And I've already said I'm in on it, and at this point, it's one of those where, what better way to help yourself out in terms of public opinion than to help the team that you cheated against and rob robbed the World Series of than to help win them a World Series.
It's the only way he can pay us back.
Yeah. All right. Sticking at the top, just get this one out of the way. And I guess, are we going with caveat of we just want the Dodgers to sign them? We're not caring about what they're asking for, I guess.
Yeah. We're not worried about. Yeah, we're not worried about roster implications. Yeah. If you want Carlos Rodón, make him your pick.
Yeah. A 7-year deal. I don't know if I want Carlos Rodón, but I want Carlos Rodón in general. We've talked about starting pitching, and it's one of those where Carlos Rodón helps you out in a couple spots. He helps you out. This is assuming health, obviously, which we're gonna assume with everybody we pick. He helps you out this year because he slots in near the top of your rotation, 1, 2, however you feel about Julio. He fills in the spot at the top with Walker Buehler out. He helps you hedge a little bit if Julio leaves in free agency after this year, because you'll have him and Walker Buehler at the top of your rotation, for the next some odd years until Buehler's a free agent, and then you figure that out. And he's been good. And he's been, last year he threw almost 180 innings. The year before he was relatively healthy the entire year with the White Sox. And yeah, he fills a role. He helps you hedge a little bit against, the future. And if he stays healthy, he, with the Dodgers, obviously going to the Giants, they've kind of become a little pitching haven there of guys going there and either resurrecting or bettering their careers or whatever the case is. Dodgers are the same way, so you wouldn't expect him to get any worse. If anything, he might get a little bit better, or whatever the case is. And yeah, that's all laid out for Carlos Rodón. It makes a lot of sense. Like I said, if we're going by him looking for 7-year deals, maybe it doesn't make as much sense, but we're not thinking about that right now. And that's who the Dodgers, would benefit. One of the guys that would benefit the Dodgers the most at this point. And obviously, he's one of the best free agents available. So that makes a lot of sense, but he makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And newsflash, this podcast by and for Dodger fans would like the Dodgers to sign the best pitcher and the best position player available. This first segment was not very controversial. Obviously, Correa is always controversial, but as far as quality of players goes, we didn't really get too tricky, too outside the box. But I think our next 4 picks each is going to get more creative, because I don't think there's a consensus, and we may not even repeat any. Rodon would have been my next choice too, and so we had the same top 2. I'm interested to see if we have any of the same on the rest of our lists. So we're going to come back in just a minute, and we will continue this draft. But first, I want to talk to you about SimpliSafe, because this podcast episode is brought to you by SimpliSafe. At Locked On Dodgers, we believe home should be where you and your family feel safest, especially over the holidays. This season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the #1 rated home security system, SimpliSafe. And right now, SimpliSafe is offering Locked On Dodgers listeners 40% off a new security system. Don't put this off. SimpliSafe was named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News & World Report, a 3rd year in a row. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real, so you can get priority police response. 24/7 professional monitoring costs under $1 a day. That's less than half the cost of ADT's traditional professional install plans. And as I've mentioned before, you might be like me and think, wow, security system must be really expensive. That's for real adults. Guess what? It's not just for real adults. We can get it too, because it is super affordable. So act like a real adult and get a security system and protect your home and your family and everything that you love. Don't miss your chance to save big on our favorite security system. Get 40% off any new system at simplisafe.com/lockedonmlb today. That's SimpliSafe, simplisafe.com/lockedonmlb. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. All right, we are back. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. When you're done with this episode, for your second listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. It's the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. All right, Vince, right back into our draft. I guess it's my turn to pick. I am going to go. I'm interested to know if you might have thought about this guy. My next pick is Gene Segura. And wow,
that was my next
really pick. That's so funny. Yeah, I thought I was being creative, but yeah, Segura checks a lot of boxes for me. He's good defensively at a couple positions. He's played shortstop, he's played second base. I'm positive he could play third base if necessary. So he could be kind of that utility infielder guy. He's not a great hitter, but he's a solid hitter, and he doesn't strike out, which is something that I feel like I'm so torn when it comes to strikeouts, because I really do believe the new age approach of a lot of the time there's not really any practical difference between a strikeout and a weak ground out to second, but every once in a while there is. And it's not, having a guy who doesn't strike out in those rare occasions where it does matter. It's nice to have that guy available, whether it's off the bench in a pinch hitting role. You think about, if we've got a runner on third and one out in a tie game in the bottom of the ninth inning, we got Gene Segura on the bench. You might actually think, we could send him up. He can get us a sac fly, whatever it is, even if he's not going to do great. He's a solid hitter. We saw he had some big hits in the postseason for the Phillies. He seems to be a likable guy. I did hate him briefly a couple years ago because he was the reason that Andrew McCutchen got hurt when McCutchen was on the Phillies, because Segura, he didn't run out a double play and ended up McCutchen had to hustle extra because of Segura's laziness, and McCutchen ended up hurting his leg. I don't remember all the details. I just remember I was mad at Gene Segura, but apparently I'm over it because I don't even remember the details. And I would really like to have Gene Segura on the team.
Yeah, I forget where I was reading an article about, postseason baseball and just kind of how do you make a team that's going to be good in the postseason. And, pitching wise, it's limiting hard contact and limiting contact, and hitting, it's making more contact because, realistically, you're going to be facing guys that are better pitchers. You're going to be facing relievers that are more rested, and, you're going to be not making as much contact. So, a low strikeout rate's better. We saw Gene Segura. I mean, he hit one baseball in that big comeback against the Cardinals, basically off the ground. Then he hit another one against the Braves, one of those series. I forget who they played, but he went back and he hit another one and had a big clutch hit. So little things like that is, ground out over a strike regular season game. You're not going to really remember. Think about it. A ground out over a strikeout in the postseason where there's, runner on second, nobody out, and he grounds out and moves the runner over. It does help out, you would think, because you would hope that the run gets in. So he makes sense there. And it kind of leads into my pick now of a guy that doesn't strike out a lot, a guy that makes a lot of contact, a guy that I've really kind of wanted on the Dodgers for a while now. It might be a little bit too late, but I still think he can help out, and that's Michael Brantley. Michael Brantley can play left field, can be a DH. The Dodgers don't, as of this point, as of now, Max Muncy would have to play in the field, so they don't necessarily have a DH, for sure DH. And he was hurt last year, but he is a little bit older, but he's still been productive. And even last year, he was productive. And like I said, he's just there, consistent, makes contact, not too much power, but he's a guy that every time the Dodgers face them, you just expect him to get a hit, whether it's a little, similar to Freddie Freeman, a single to left field. He'll hit a little bit more of the gaps than Freeman hits a little bit more for power. But he's a guy that kind of fits. I don't know if he can play left field every day at this point, and realistically probably not, but he can play some left field, some DH, depending on what else they do around him. I think he fits this lineup, and, he can just be a guy that's there, and he's been in the postseason. He's, been there before, which is a lot different, and people know how it goes. And I think he's a guy that would have a great role in this Dodger team.
I like that pick. He wasn't on my list, but he has been on my list in the past. And he played for the Astros, but he doesn't have the Astros tank because he didn't go to the Astros till 2019. And so basically he signed with the Astros. He played for the Astros after they had cheated and were done cheating, and before we knew that they were cheaters. And so he's clear on both sides, controversy wise. I guess I'm going to stick in that same kind of, not sure if he can play left field or if he need to be a DH. This one's a little more sure on the DH, but I'm going to go with JD Martinez. JD Martinez is a guy who's been talked about as potentially to the Dodgers for a long time. We know that he has a good relationship with Mookie Betts. He has a good relationship with Robert Van Scoyoc. And he is at times a very, very good hitter. And really, I mean, he's been a good hitter almost his entire career, other than 2020 when he struggled in that shortened season. He has been somewhere between good and really, really, really good. And I'd like to see that with the Dodgers. I don't know. I don't know how much he has left in the tank. He's what, 35 years old? Yeah, he's 35. Um, but I doubt he would command a huge contract. And I think he's a guy who could really, you know, my only hang up about Martinez is he's really just a DH, and they're kind of locked in at him at DH if they go with them. I don't think they would run him out in left field very often at all, uh, and so that makes it a little bit challenging. But he's such a good hitter when he's on that it might be worth it. So I'm going with JD Martinez for my second pick or my third pick.
Yeah, I mean that works. He fits. Like I said, having the DH only, that's not a top like 15 hitter in the game. I mean, he could be a top 15 hitter in the game, but hasn't been top 15 recently. Is a little bit tough, but if anyone, the Dodgers can make it work. Next one I have is a guy that can play the middle infield, can play the infield. He had a big season last year, a little bit, somewhat of an anomaly in his career. Brandon Drury, realistically, the way it's going, Chris Taylor's going to have a for sure almost everyday type role at this point, whether it's in center, whether it's in left, whether it's second base, whether it's shortstop, whether it's third base, whatever the case is. As of right now, Chris Taylor's kind of in an everyday role, similar to Max Muncy. Brandon Drury just helps out in the case that, whoever they play at second, or if they call it Michael Bush or whoever it is, in the case that they don't hit, in the case that, they can't handle it, he's a guy that can be that. And it, last year, 28 home runs, 87 RBI, 813 OPS, 122 OPS plus. He had never had an OPS plus, or 2021, he had a pretty decent year, 111. But before that, he hadn't really done too much, and had 101 OPS plus back in 2016. So you're a little bit weary. I didn't go into depth because this was a little bit of a last minute idea, but I don't know if it was swing change or whether it's just him, finally realizing pitching was figuring it out or whatever the case is. But if there's something there that either was related to swing change or some type of foundational change in his hitting, then I think even want him because he's still young enough to where he's still going to produce. It could be, he wasn't on tendered, but this could be like, a Justin Turner type where Justin Turner didn't come off a year like Brandon Drury did, but a guy that can come in and be a role player for sure at the beginning, maybe blossom into a different role and, fill in holes for the Dodgers around the infield and a little bit of the outfield.
Yeah. Drury was one I had on my list with a question mark, who I was going to maybe get to him if you stole too many of mine. My big issue with Drury is, again, defense. He can play multiple positions, but doesn't play any of them very well. And so it's more of a, he's kind of like the opposite of Hanser Alberto, who could play multiple positions but didn't hit at all. Drury would probably hit, and if you trust the hit tool, and like you said, I don't know if he made a change or if it is a fluky 2 season. So I'd be a little bit leery of him. Speaking of Justin Turner, do you remember that in late 2013 or early 2014, before the Dodgers signed Justin Turner, you wrote an article for Dodgers Nation suggesting that the Dodgers should sign Justin Turner?
I did not remember that.
Yeah, I came across it the other day. I was because I write for Dodgers Nation now, and so I was writing something about JT, and I was going to put a link in. So I was looking at some articles about, like, the earliest articles about JT, and there was an article about making the case for the Dodgers to sign Justin Turner, and I pulled it up, and written by Vince Samperio. So yeah, look at you.
I knew.
So we're going to come back in just a minute. We each have 2 picks left, and probably saving the best for last, I assume. So we will be back in a second to make our last 2 picks of who we want the Dodgers to pick. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting, info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup, we've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we are back, and it is time for our last 4 picks, 2 picks each. And yeah, I've got 3 names left on my list for 2 possible picks. 2 position players and a pitcher. So I guess I'm going to go with the pitcher next, and then I'll try to decide between the 2 position players for my last pick. My next pick is Ross Stripling. Ross Stripling is a free agent. He has pitched really, really well for the Blue Jays at times, and I think Stripling could come in. Obviously, he's well known to Dodger fans. Dodger fans love him, and to the extent that the Dodgers are looking for starting pitching, really they could use either an ace or a number 5 innings eater. It's kind of because they have top of the rotation starters. They have potential. I mean, really, all 4 of the Dodgers set starters. I think we talked about this yesterday. All 4 of the starters the Dodgers know they have, Julio and Kershaw and Gonsolin and May. All 4 of them have potential to be aces, and so they don't necessarily need an ace. Obviously, you and I both had Carlos Rodon at the top of our list for a reason. But if they didn't go with an ace, going with a guy like Stripling to come in, and he's a guy we know he can work as a swingman too. He can pitch out of the bullpen if necessary. He could be a piggyback starter. He could fill a lot of roles for the Dodgers if they do go with, if they want to go with Bobby Miller and have, okay, but we still need to limit Miller's innings. We don't want to overwork him this young. And so, maybe we're going to limit Miller to 4 innings per start, or, 60 pitches or whatever. You have Stripling be a piggybacker with him. He could be the 5th starter at times, if somebody gets hurt or whatever. I think Stripling could fill a lot of roles on a pitching staff, and he's such a good dude. I think in the clubhouse and the dugout, everything, he would be a positive influence. He's a veteran at this point, and I like Ross Stripling, and he's been on this podcast, and so everything about Ross Stripling makes sense.
Yeah, and that's similar to the role I have next. But yeah, Ross Stripling makes sense, would be comfortable. Probably wouldn't command much at this point. Guys around him are getting, 10 to 12, maybe 15 mil. So if you're thinking money wise, not too bad. The next guy I have is one that's based on assuming the starting pitching or pitching in general market starts to crash a little bit. And it's a guy that's a little bit of a project, but could make sense. And that's Noah Syndergaard. Noah Syndergaard in a similar type swingman role. You're not giving him a spot in the rotation, but you're thinking you can make him into a pretty solid reliever. Now, his velocity was down last year, but he will be 1 more year removed from all those injuries and that surgery. So, you have that going for it. I mean, he still threw his fastball still averaged 94.1, his sinker 94. So he could still ramp it up and it wouldn't be too big of an issue. But you look at his splits last year, and you can talk yourself into him being a reliever if you kind of talk yourself into it a little bit. So by last year, his splits, the first inning of a game when he was a starter, his ERA was 6. But then second, third inning, his ERA was 2.35, 2.82. And then, but when you go to someone facing him the first time in a game, he held opponents to a 676 OPS, which isn't great for a pitcher, but it isn't terrible. And he was in the role of a starter where he knows he's going to have to try to go at least 5 innings. So, he's not emptying the tank. If you can get him in a role where he's only going to throw 1, 2, 3 innings at a time, he can feel a little bit more comfortable emptying the tank. Maybe some of that velocity comes back. He'll still be able to get guys out. He did a decent job for the Phillies in the postseason, getting guys out in certain situations or not letting the game get too out of hand. Now, that doesn't sound promising, but we're not dealing with a lot of free agents left that are here because they're good pitchers. A lot of them are here because they're not that great pitchers. And I think he's one of those guys that in a specific role of a guy that's occasional spot star, but mostly relieving, similar to, like I said, if they're going to use guys, Bobby Miller, Pepio, whoever it is, and they don't want him to go too much, I can fill in. He can empty the tank for 2 innings at a time, get that velocity back, and, still have the way he learned how to pitch a little bit last year. I think he could fill a role, but he would have to drop salary-wise technically, but we're not thinking about that right now. So, yeah, I think it would work out.
Yeah, I don't hate that idea. I think a lot of it for me would depend on if the Dodgers think they can identify why the velocity is down. All right, my last pick. I'm going to make you guess. What if I told you it is the active career leader in caught stealings? Been caught stealing more than any other active player.
Um, is it McCutcheon? He would try to steal a lot. So
McCutcheon is fourth
oh,
on the stolen base. Yeah, 84 caught stealings for Andrew McCutcheon. This guy has 111, despite he's played the same number of years as McCutcheon. This guy uh, has more stolen bases than I would have guessed. He has 335 career stolen bases and 111 caught stealings.
Josh
And
Harrison.
no,
Um,
Josh Harrison, I don't see him on this list. I'm sure he's here somewhere. He's number 26. He's only been caught 37 times in his career, but he also only has 128 stolen bases. Anyway, his name is Elvis Andrus, and he is a guy who he's only played shortstop in his career. I don't necessarily like the idea of signing him to be their shortstop, but again, like, so I probably don't like the idea of them signing him and Gene Segura. But if some general manager thinks like you and me and had Gene Segura on his list, Elvis Andrus would be a decent backup plan there. He's only played shortstop, but I assume he could play other positions. And he's just got a lot of tools that I don't know what it is, like he's just been quietly okay for a long time. He's never been a great hitter. He's usually been a below average hitter. He's not as good a hitter as Segura, but he also how many career hits you think Elvis Andrus has?
it's more. It's like over 2,000, right? He was like one of
Just
the.
under. He's 3 hits away from
Okay.
2,000. Yeah, it's 1,997 hits. He's got a 96 career homers. He could get his 2000th hit at his 100th career homer in Dodger blue. It would be like Albert Pujols all over again, making history. Yeah, Andrus, he's just a guy who I feel like he could provide some value off the bench, utility infielder kind of guy. And if you need a guy to go get caught stealing for you, he could do that too.
There you go. The Dodgers don't need that, but
No,
yeah, I mean, he
picture
works.
this,
He
Vince.
makes
It's
sense.
raining. Dodgers have a lead, and they need to get the fifth inning over with. Go send pinch run with Elvis Andrus. Go get caught stealing.
There you go. That works. Yeah, I mean, he's. It's kind of interesting because like the Dodgers don't have a shortstop in waiting. It's not like he would be a perfect stopgap shortstop, but they don't necessarily need that. I mean, I guess you could always delay it a year and see what happens, or who becomes available or whatever the case. But yeah, I mean, he makes sense. Um, yeah, there's my last one. There's gonna be if you're gonna be listening, you might be like, there's other guys better than him or whatever the case, and yeah, that's very possible. But I don't know. I've always kind of liked this guy, even when he was on the Giants, I didn't dislike him because of him. I just disliked him because he was on the Giants. That's Johnny Cueto. Now, this one goes kind of against of what we said of the Dodgers need somebody that's either a number one or two or more of a swingman type. I don't think he really fills either of those roles, but he can eat innings for you. Last year, he signed late with the White Sox. He went more than 6 innings in I think 18 of his starts. He had quality starts and he went more than 6 innings in 24 starts or averaged more than 6 innings, 24 starts. So he's a guy that can, if the Dodgers really wanted to, they could probably run a 6-man rotation next year or some kind of variation of that where, Julio, Kershaw, whoever else goes all the time. And then they kind of rotate the last 2 or 3 spots or whatever the case is of either giving a guy extra rest or they're going to piggyback or whatever the case is. And he's a guy kind of like Tyler Anderson did for him last year, where he's just going to pitch 5, 6, 7 innings every time out. He's not going to strike out a lot of guys. He's very good at limiting hard contact, which is something the Dodgers specialize in already anyways. And it would be, I don't know how, I actually don't know how you feel about Johnny Cueto in general, but I don't mind all the, like the delays and all the deception that he does with his delivery. Only because like I was a junk ball pitcher, and when I played in the adult leagues on Sundays, I would try everything to try to disrupt people's timing. So I think I relate to it. Maybe that's why I like him.
Yeah, I have strong feelings about Johnny Cueto, and they're not positive. And honestly, it's like I hate the stupid quirks he does on the mound, but mostly because he does them. I've actually disliked Johnny Cueto since long before he went to the Giants. When he was with the Reds, he had that they had a bench clearing brawl with the Cardinals, and he ended Jason LaRue's career by karate kicking him in the head repeatedly with his cleats. And so I've had issues with Johnny Cueto ever since then. If they signed Carlos Correa and Johnny Cueto, they would really be testing Jerry Seinfeld's theory about how we're just rooting for laundry and we don't care who's wearing it for me. But, I go back to Juan Uribe. Back in 2010, the Dodgers, in the same week, they non-tendered Russell Martin, my favorite Dodger, and then they signed Juan Uribe, who was literally my least favorite player in baseball at the time. And I learned to not just tolerate Uribe, I actually learned to like Uribe. I really liked him by the end. And I realized that I was, the only reasons I disliked him.
But we didn't like him until he started playing well, because I hated him those first couple of years.
That's probably true. Yeah.
He was not good.
Yeah. Playing well and the personality, he was kind of Hanser Alberto if Hanser Alberto had been able to hit, But yeah, and I realized that my reasons for not liking him were childish. I didn't like him because he had been on the Giants, and in the 2005 World Series and he was on the White Sox, he had this stupid bleached goatee thing that I thought looked stupid. And that was why I didn't like Juan Uribe. So, I have better reasons, I think, for Correa and Cueto, but I assume I'd get over those two, or at least enough that I could root for them to do well when they were playing for the Dodgers. So, yeah, I don't hate the Cueto idea, even though I hate the Cueto idea. So,
yeah.
All right. Anybody else on your honorable mentions or anybody who almost made your list?
Nathan Eovaldi was a more expensive version of what I would want for Syndergaard, although he could be a closer for sure. So
yeah, I'd probably take Eovaldi over Syndergaard probably at this point. But yeah, the only other guy on my list who I didn't say, the guy I was trying to decide between him and Elvis Andrews, and I'm still not sure I made the right decision, was Donovan Solano. It's kind of the same situation.
Just so he doesn't face the Dodgers, it makes sense.
Yeah, Solano has more positional flexibility and is probably a better hitter than Andrews, but probably not as good a defender. So, it's a toss-up. But all right, well, I think that's going to do it for today. This was fun, and I doubt the Dodgers will sign all 10 of these guys, but I'll settle for Correa and Rodón. But whatever it is,
I'll take it.
Yeah, make something happen, Dodgers, or don't. We'll see. Whatever happens, we will be here to talk about it because that's what we do. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Thank you for listening to us. If you're not watching or listening to Locked On Dodgers every weekday morning, we'd love if you add 1 or 2 days a month to your rotation. If you have friends or family who love the Dodgers, please tell them about the show. Maybe they'll like it too. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at Vince Samperio. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and the DMs are open in all of those places. Our email address is lockedondodgers@gmail.com, and our phone number for voicemails or text messages is 323-863-LOCK-5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.